Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everybody watching us from across the world, I guess. Today is our daily live here at Rebel News. I am Drea Humphrey, and also beside me is the lovely Tamara Ugolini. How are you doing?
Hey, Drea, thanks. I'm doing well today. I'm feeling a little bit off, to be honest. So I'm hoping to be able to keep the energy high for all of our viewers at home. Thanks for following us along and tuning in. And what about you, Drea? How you doing over there in BC?
Well, I'm good. I hope you feel better soon. I think people admire your brain the most. So I think as long as that's working, they'll be happy. No, I'm doing good. Yeah, it's been busy. We're going to talk about one of the things that I've been sort of reporting on over the last 2 days. So we've got a pretty good lineup for you guys coming up here. So we're talking about something's a big story that came out of our colleague here, Adam Sos, as well. But before we do that, just a little bit of house rules for you guys in case this is the first time you've been, or some of you I know through the chats that you guys come regularly. So thank you for that. But basically we do this daily, and right now we're live streaming on YouTube. So you might be watching us here, or you might be watching us on one of the other platforms, which I recommend you check out, which could be Rumble, Getter, or Odyssey. And the reason why I suggest checking those out is, sometimes the censorship gods here on YouTube are not the kindest to us, depending on what we're talking about. So we try to do our best to make sure at the beginning of the live stream, we talk about YouTube safe things that aren't going to get us the boot, but sometimes that changes. So sometimes halfway through or so, we go to the other side. Or if our dear behind the scenes colleagues thinks we're getting too spicy, they might abruptly do that. So you want to check out those other platforms, Rumble, Odyssey, and Getter. And also, if you want to let us know what you think about what we're talking about today, there's a really cool way to do that. You can go to Rumble Rants, and you can just do a little donation, kind of like a tip if you like what we're doing here and want to help us with just covering the cost to do journalism. You give us a little tip, and we will read your comment there to let everybody know that. And I believe you can do so on Odyssey as well. So I think that was wordy. But did I miss anything, Tamara? Yeah, normally you do it, but yeah.
I don't think so. I think that about covers it. And we'll remind people, as we gain more followers and viewers on the live stream. So if you're just joining us, don't worry. We'll give you a rundown. I think the only thing we missed is the date for anyone who's not aware. Today's Thursday, August 25th. So crazy to think that we're almost at the end of summer. And, for anyone who does the school thing, heading back to school in a mere week and a half, I suppose it is. I'm just, the summer just flew by for me, and I'm sure many people, and it seems to be kind of an ongoing every year thing. It's like already we're there. So that's wild to think.
This is my first year going back to school as a homeschool mom. I don't know it feels weird. Like I was in the store the other day and I was looking at school supplies, and my son's like, "Oh, school supplies." And I'm like, we already got the supplies. I don't know what happens every time at the end of the year when they go to school. It's like they need everything new again, but I'm not finding that with homeschool. We already had it. So interesting times. So what do we got first on the list here? We've got, I'm going to look down on my phone. Sorry about that. You're going to see my big forehead. My brothers used to tease me about. So the first thing on the list is head of Canada's National Firearms Program, that's RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki, admits that she doesn't know the firearms laws intimately. I think we have a video about this nonsense.
And as the head of the firearms program in Canada, presumably you understand that without a PAL, either restricted or non-restricted, in any way that perpetrator is in possession of firearms, it's a criminal offense.
Yes.
And to the extent that he acquires ammunition is a criminal offense.
Yes. And
to the extent that any license holder knowingly assists him in acquiring the materials used as part of his...
The sigh.
I have to say, I don't know those laws intimately.
Wow.
I know that there are obviously illegalities when you don't have the proper licensing. I know that. whether the restricted, the prohibited, what people can and cannot do with a license, I don't intimately know those, but what you're saying, I'm trusting that it's true.
It's literally her job to know those things.
The head of the firearms. How do you not know this? And another thing is, like, if you're a legal gun owner, if you know someone, they have to know everything about the ins and outs. There's no mercy. You don't lock that gun up properly and you're going to go to jail if you get caught with that. And here she is. Oh, I must admit. And did you sense the frustration? Did you sense that sigh that she did? So I've covered, if you go to my Twitter, I've covered sort of live tweets over the last 2 days of Brenda Lucki testifying at the Mass Casualty Commission, which is the independent public inquiry probing into the 2020 mass shooting. She gets really frustrated with that lawyer. He's Michael Scott. He's representing the most of the victims' family members. So his questions, all the questions are important, but he's asking questions based on what his clients want him to ask. She got frustrated with him in a couple of different areas with his lines of questioning. She did apologize the next day for that frustration. But how unprofessional, and how do you not know the basic laws surrounding your position? Unacceptable.
Well, that's just it. And I did sense, the body language there is a little bit bizarre, and obviously lends to the fact that she was feeling frustrated. And Drea, maybe you can comment further on this, but I watched a little bit more of that clip. I didn't watch the whole thing, but she basically goes back and forth about how, she was misled potentially by her communications team. And to me, the whole thing just seems like a giant game of telephone when you are like literally in charge of our national security, and you're just going through this game of telephone, trying to figure out who said what and what I should say and what I shouldn't say. And hopefully it's the right thing by the time it makes it down to me at the end of the line here. Can you speak on that at all when you were watching the situation unfold?
Yeah, and just quickly, for anybody who's watching and they're not from Canada, you might not know what we're even talking about, which says our deadliest mass shooting occurred in 2020 in Nova Scotia, where a man named Gabriel Wortman disguised himself as a police officer and went around rural Nova Scotia and slayed 22 people. So that's what this public inquiry is about. And she is the head of the RCMP. She's in charge of everything as the commissioner. And you're right. She's kind of saying, oh, the communications led me wrong and all of this. And it was a mess. But what I noticed throughout her whole testimony over the 2 days is she took no accountability for absolutely anything going wrong, and a lot went wrong. And why lawyer Michael Scott is asking those questions is because there's been a lot of tie to political interference with a promise she allegedly made to Trudeau's office and Bill Blair to go ahead and use this massacre to further the Liberals' gun ban, which of course was a gun ban against legal firearms owners, which was not the case of this mass murderer. So he had legal guns. So yeah, you're right. No accountability there. And even she did kind of deflect to the comms team in that situation, but I noticed she didn't really put anybody from the RCMP under the fire in any way, shape or form, because ultimately that reflects on her.
Right. And it's reflecting on her, but as it's reflecting onto her, she is deflecting onto everyone else behind her who may have been in the wrong. And yeah, as you already stated, not taking any accountability or responsibility for how this was handled, because she's obviously facing a lot of scrutiny, and the line of questioning is very relevant and important for justice for the families, but of course to the broader range of Canadians. And so naturally, if she's feeling frustrated, it's because perhaps there is some truth that is trying to be covered up or not have come to light. So the game of it really, again, just reminded me of this game of telephone, like getting down the line, if that's even what happened. I'm looking forward to more coming out as the investigation there. I guess it's not technically an investigation. There was
inquiry.
Yes, as the inquiry continues. And so actually I was referencing back to some of your earlier reports on that they say the inquiry isn't It's not like a scrutiny thing. It's to facilitate change. I was pretty shocked to even read something like that this, inquiry is to affect change. How does that happen without the truth coming to light?
Yeah, I think they are still, focused on getting the truth come to light, but they want to make sure that the people who do testify realize, that they're not going to jail tomorrow. But the truth comes out through this inquiry, and what could happen from that truth is another story. So, and that includes people like the killer's common law spouse. She might be very nervous to talk and things like that. So I think that's why it's an independent public inquiry to make sure we better handle the situation next time. And for those of you who want to catch up on this, you can go to firelucky, LUCKI.com. And also I'm working on a report over today about the last 2 days of testimony from Commissioner Lucki as well. So you want to check out there and sign our petition, because it is remarkable that she really is still in this position. I mean, that's the most shocking part of this of all, because the 3 senior testimonies about the political interference are quite damning. So you can sign our petition there to say it's time to fire Brenda Lucki and get someone we can trust to help serve and protect us. So. Yeah.
And someone who's nonpartisan, right? Who's not potentially tied and interfering with the Justin Trudeau Liberals to further their political agenda. The RCMP is supposed to be independent of whichever party is in power at the time. And as more things go on with Brenda Lucki, I very much question and have a lot of doubt there how independent and nonpartisan she really is.
Mm-hmm. So. And she doesn't even know what she's doing. She doesn't know the laws. So get somebody else in there.
Let's get someone. Well, that seems to be the way with the Liberal Party of Canada. Like you don't have a portfolio that fits your position and what you need to do in your role there. And so let's just hire you anyway, because we're the Liberals.
You look the part, that's for sure.
Yeah.
She looks the part.
Oh, that's sad.
What do we got here now? We've got Defense Chief. I'm reading from a Global News report here. So Defense Chief got legal advice on military's role after Emergencies Act invoked. So more on our martial law, basically. So if you go down further, it says Canada's Defense Chief received a legal memo that appears to address questions around the role of the military in aiding law enforcement shortly after Prime Minister Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act to clear out the so-called Freedom Convoy. No, that's just what it was called in February. It's like, why are they even going to go there? So that's kind of crazy. If you scroll down a bit here. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
The thing that really stood out to me in this article is that the vast majority of this access to information request was redacted. So, solidarity with Global News, because that happens to my access to information requests all the time. I'm endlessly appealing them and trying to sift through and see if there was even just a crumb of relevance that was not redacted. So the whole basis of this article is really assumption based, from what I can tell. I think it's about a third of the way through the article. They note that the document appears to end with uncertainty, and it's like, well, welcome to the whole unfolding of the invocation of the Emergencies Act and the way that this protest was handled. It's all uncertain. Mm-hmm. And as this another inquiry takes place here to try to dissect what happened and why Trudeau decided to go with this extreme heavy-handed measure, more of that uncertainty becomes clearer and clearer. And we're starting to see that basically every merit and reason and rationale and justification that was used at the time to invoke the Emergencies Act is turning out to be entirely untrue.
Yeah. And you remind me of something. I don't know if we have a screen for this or if it's been announced, but I think you kind of touched on it. There is going to be a public inquiry into this. And the really good news is that our charity partners at the Democracy Fund, one of the lawyers from there, Alan Honor, a good guy, he's going to be able to question people and bring forth evidence in that commission. So that's huge. Here we go here. So the public inquiry into use of Emergencies Act during convoy protests. So no one covered this convoy like Rebel News. If you're new to us and you didn't see it, I mean, we had, I think at one point, I could be wrong because I stayed in BC, you know, we covered from the other provinces saying bye to the truckers as they got to Ottawa. And I think we had like 9 journalists at some point there. You know, Alexa and Lincoln lived there for the 3 weeks. So no one covered it. We did live stream so you could see what happened. No one's going to cover this commission like Rebel News as well. So if you are interested in actually finding out the truth of what comes out of there, because I'm sure there's going to be news sources picking and choosing what they want to discuss, make sure you've given us your email or something so that you don't miss when that's happening and how to best find information about that. So you can give us your email at rebelnews.com.
And also we have convoyreports.com, and that website you can go through and click back, you know, up into January when it first kind of began and came to fruition. You can find all of our previous reports on the subject at convoyreports.com. And I imagine we'll probably utilize that as well when we begin the coverage of the inquiry that's set to begin September 19th. And I think it will run until mid to end of October. So it'll be about 4-week long process. So we will have in-depth coverage, and I believe some of the reporters who were at the convoy itself throughout those 3 weeks will be heading back into Ottawa to give more on-the-ground coverage of the inquiry as it takes place in real time. So yeah, absolutely. You'll want to hear this side of the story because it's not filled with uncertainty and hyperbole. Basically, like the mainstream media spewed and espoused all of this literal misinformation about the convoy, you know, everything from the foreign interference or foreign funding turned out to not be true.
Russian.
There was a smoldering in a nearby apartment building that they were tried to conflate and associate with convoy participants. That turned out to be entirely untrue. I'm sure I'm missing other small tidbits, but those were like the main reasons and the main drivers
the fires, the setting fire was one of the other things, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you
the smoldering.
Yeah. Oh, smoldering. Okay. You're so good with the exact terminology. And let's not forget, for people who didn't tune in, maybe they're too busy, they're going on with their life, the fact that the Prime Minister went ahead and enacted the Emergencies Act, martial law, basically, that says to a lot of people, well, there must have been good reason for that. Right? A lot of people just think, you know, it must have been terrorism or something. They must have a good reason. So, you know, a lot of people have been led astray. It was so peaceful. My concern was that something, you know, just a simple fight was going to happen and it was going to get out of hand. But it was so peaceful that in the 3 weeks, and I know there was alcohol there wasn't even a fist fight between the protesters. Like, you know what I mean? So, but so.
Well, and it's come out ever since then as well, that the day that Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act was the same day that the convoy was negotiating and working with the Ottawa mayor and the police to clear vehicles out of certain areas of the downtown core. And they call this a blockade or an occupation. But meanwhile, nowhere in the mainstream media did they ever mention that the truckers positioned themselves in such a way to always allow at least one lane of traffic through and around the areas that they had taken up their protest at. So there was never like this full-on blockade of streets or egress roadways. There was always a path. Yeah, it was a hindrance and a delay, and it was inconvenient, but hello, that's the whole point of a protest, is to have your voices heard. And when no one's coming to the table to hear that outright, then you're going to be there for 3 weeks waiting for your voice to be heard. But the Trudeau Liberals just could not have that happen. And the embarrassment, international embarrassment, they had to impose this Emergencies Act, which I think is just going to further embarrass the way that they handled the whole thing.
I'm really looking forward to finding out more about that. I think we are moving on to an ad break now. I don't know what the ad is, but I just want to say shout out to any of the companies who do ads with us. Since I've started here, we doubled in size. So that's thanks to the viewers who donate. I think that is where we get the bulk of our money. But also some companies, they might love us but still not want to team up with us. So kudos to any that do. But we'll see what this ad is. And if you guys want to support us or the company that you see, that's awesome.
We're running a convoy, Mocha's documentary. So he was one of our videographers who embedded himself in the convoy and followed it from Alberta to the nation's capital in Ottawa. And so this is a little teaser of his documentary that is to be released.
We started off this convoy calling it Taking Back Our Freedoms. But our freedoms are nobody's to take away. So we're going to restore everybody's freedoms.
People came here wanting to only do a day, and the word with all the truckers is they're now staying for many days. Like a lot of people now are planning on days and days in Ottawa. So
we are here to end the mandat. I am not leaving till we get what we want. We're not going to give up.
On lunch, I could be on lunch a long, long time. My choice, especially the choice for my child. My body, Trudeau, not yours. When your job and your livelihood is held against.
So fun. I love that it launches the same day as the inquiry is set to begin.
Yeah, more truth bombs coming out. No, that looks really exciting. I can't wait to watch that with the family. And like another thing, you're not going to see anything like that as well. It's going to have footage that you haven't seen already and moments that we couldn't capture in a report or what have you. But the story needs to be told. So that's another reason that I love that we're doing documentaries as well, to give people sort of a full grasp of situations like that. So very exciting.
Now, speaking of mainstream media misinformation, the next story that we have to share with you is that apparently Canada's convoy movement, we waved the Dutch flag, and then conspiracy theories swirled about fertilizer and bugs. So there's that term, conspiracy theory, once again, to just gaslight and disregard any of these very real concerns that Canadians might have around radical fertilizer reduction and the fact that we're going to apparently be eating bugs to replace our meat intake. And this particular article, I think that they sourced Rebel News specifically about halfway down. Rebel News, they say, for instance, claimed the Dutch government had, quote, pandered to the radical demands of the World Economic Forum, echoing a popular conspiracy theory that maintains the Swiss think tank is secretly forcing governments around the world to adopt left-wing policies. Secretly, right? Because Klaus Schwab didn't come out and literally say in one of his talks that they infiltrate the cabinet and
penetrated. He said didn't he say penetrated? Yeah.
Penetrate, infiltrate. Yeah. Same thing. That they've penetrated, infiltrated the cabinets. And, for instance, Canada has a very great rate of World Economic, their early, what are they called? The Young Global Leaders. Yeah. And various other WEF brainchild programs that essentially churn out these elected officials and penetrate their cabinets. And so he says that this isn't a conspiracy theory. It's not. Klaus Schwab literally said that they do that. Oh, here, we have the clip. Can we play that?
Let's show it.
Here's our your conspiracy theory.
Our modern day villain.
I don't think we have any sound on it yet. There we go.
What we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, so that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I knows that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true in Argentina.
Yeah, so apparently that's a conspiracy theory, everyone.
Such a conspiracy. The good part here is people are smart. The average person is wise, and they've used that word so much. And, time has passed, and the things that they used to call you a conspiracy with COVID related, people are realizing, they weren't that wrong. So now it's going to get to the point where a lot of people are going to look at them, say conspiracy, and go, this must be true. And I'm glad they're saying our name, because correct me if I'm wrong, but normally the legacy media ignores us. I think their strategy is to not let people find us. And so go ahead, mention us for people who are inquisitive and want to find out a little bit more. They can come and go, oh yeah, this isn't a conspiracy at all. Our colleague and chief editor, Sheila Gunn-Reid, is an actual farmer. So when she does her reports on this is in fact she calls it a global war on farming. That's a huge issue here. And I think somewhere, is it towards the bottom of this article? Well, I'll read this part. It says, the reasons, in quotations, the reasons we're standing in solidarity with the Dutch farmers is because these policies are actually coming to Canada as well. So I think that's what some of the protesters were saying, and that's what they're calling a conspiracy theory. And then, I'm trying to find the bottom, but I'll recap. Oh, shoot, I can't find it. But basically, there's a comment. They say the far right is trying to use the Netherlands and make it sort of a national or whatever, an international thing.
The very bottom, the far right sees this as an opportunity to spread their anti-democratic narrative. Now, the whole point of having a democracy is to be able to scrutinize and debate, right?
Exactly.
So I don't think that anyone is saying I would love to see scrutiny and debate around these radical policies, not just silence and censor anyone that has an opposing viewpoint. That is anti-democratic. What I find that many of us advocate for that are deemed as far right. I mean, I would never classify myself as far right, but apparently maybe I am in the eyes of these far left radicals. That's never, the scrutiny and the debate and bringing discussions and facts to the table is what they advocate and call for, instead of just blatant censorship and silencing of anyone who wants to have that robust conversation. So, the deflection of all of these individuals in the mainstream media always astounds me, because it's like, look in the mirror at what you're doing. Like calling someone a conspiracy theorist who literally can quote the founder of the World Economic Forum that infiltrates cabinets with far left ideologies, as they literally just said, calling that person a conspiracy theorist and then saying that they have an anti-democratic narrative. That is just so damaging, and further just damages the reputation of the mainstream media. I mean, thank you, author Jonathan Monpetit, I think would be how you pronounce. He's a senior investigative journalist with CBC. Like, how embarrassing.
And he doesn't actually say that what the Dutch farmers are saying is a conspiracy. He's just saying that Canadians aligning with it. It's like the conspiracy part about it. But I'm sorry, when did it become far right to support farming? Did we not just see that happen in India? The people around the world that, they mentioned, they had the Netherlands flag at their protests. How many people stood with the Indian farmers? I mean, you saw the bumper stickers in
Justin
Canada.
Trudeau.
Yeah, but that wasn't a far right thing. It's literally almost the exact same thing. They're saying that the people in Netherlands, basically, I mean, they kind of just briefly, but they're not saying that they don't have a valid concern here. So since when can Canadians not stand with people in another country? What is wrong with that? We're seeing that with Ukraine. We see it all the time. It's so pathetic, this journalism, if you want to call it that, where it's just guiding people who don't have the time to think logically into one direction to prove one point, which is not the importance about why these farmers are saying, oh my gosh, enough is enough. We have to do something or else. They're not focusing on that. They're just taking another dig at pro-freedom protesters in Canada. Shameful.
Right. And because these policies aren't in place yet. And so Canadians and farmers are trying to get ahead of the ball and start to voice their opposition now. Obviously, before it's in place, that's too late, right? The whole part of having a democracy is to voice your opinion before the policy is put into place. And so if anyone's being anti-democratic in their narrative, it would be this author and the CBC, who's squashing all of the concerns, disregarding and gaslighting them as far right, and then not even bringing it to the table to have a discussion about it. Like maybe they should try to reach out to a farmer and interview someone to find out a little bit more. And that would be really engaging in a democratic process.
Right. I see that they had a hyperlink about the Dutch or the Netherlands farmers. And I was like, oh my gosh, they actually reported on it. And I clicked it. And it just goes to one audio. I didn't have time to listen to it before preparing. So I do want to listen to see what they said there. But I think another reason why they had to or chose to mention Rebel News, the other point is we covered it. Lincoln J met up with Lewis and they went and they covered it. So if you haven't seen it, I don't know the URL if one of you guys can find it and put it on the screen, but they covered it again like nobody else. So I think that the journalists were probably like, how do I find more information about it? And perhaps Rebel News in Canada was popping up the most. And of course, Lewis spoke directly with farmers there. And by the way, speaking about standing in solidarity, those protesters there were Canadian flags in that protest to stand in solidarity with what Canada did at the peaceful trucker convoy. So yes, there is a connection here.
I think it's farmerrebellion.com is the URL that we have where they covered the farmers. And a lot of them seem to lean on the strategy of the Canadian truckers in voicing their opposition. It's just so much easier for these smaller European countries, right, to really come together and join forces. The issue we have in Canada is that we are so sprawling and spread out geographically that it's not always tangible and easy to come together to show the opposition. And so, Canadians really rely on the media to try to get their voice heard across the nation, but also, of course, to government officials. And the media has obviously been an epic failure in that regard. They're just towing the line for the government instead of holding them to account.
Do you think this has some... Oh, do we have a chat? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so Phrasebo gives $5. Thanks, Fraser. The next sign I make up is a scorpion saying this. So you want to eat me. Good luck. Yeah.
I like that. That's a good idea.
I think Alexa was ordering some bugs or something. Maybe she had a scorpion selection to try and give it a whirl. Yeah. But yeah, she had ordered some bugs to eat or to offer to people on the street. Yeah. Thank you. But
our bravest here at Rebel News. And yeah, that's another thing. The bug eating thing is not a conspiracy as well. We've covered that quite a bit. I'm sure if you search Rebel News and bug or bugs, you'll probably find that's the truth too, not a conspiracy. But I wonder, these journalists who are still making these digs at pro-freedom protesters that have nothing better to do, you think it's just like they've kind of gotten this license to be bullies, because in journalism you're supposed to be fair and you're supposed to reach out for comment and everything like this, and not just like sort of attack people because you don't like them kind of thing. So do you think that they've got sort of addicted to being able to, sort of accuse these people of being conspiracy theorists and just crazy, that it's like they don't want to give it up?
Yeah, and they've been able to do it with immunity for so long. And I think now that they're seeing that the Canadian public is actually quite upset with the angles and the way that they are representing or presenting things, now it's all like, oh, we're the victim and feel bad for us and we're being victimized and targeted and harassed online. And it's like, yeah, welcome to the club, right? I have people who reach out to me all the time. They're like, I'm so sorry you have to deal with XYZ and you face so much backlash for just literally telling the side of the story that the mainstream media ignores or refuses to report on. And I'm not here on Twitter being like, oh, poor me, let's feel bad and victimize myself. over literally nothing. I mean, if you didn't want to be in the public light, then you shouldn't have the job that you have, because you need to have a thick skin, and your rewards shouldn't come from outside people. It should come from within. You should feel, privileged and lucky to be able to be in the position that you're in, and utilize that for good, not just to echo the talking points of the government.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, you've been through a lot. I don't know. I don't see it on the list, but it almost feels like it was such a good segue, what you said, into Trudeau.
Well, let's do these super chats.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll get to an ad after we just wrap up a couple of these super chats. So for anyone just joining us, you can engage with us directly by going on the alternative platforms. Oh, I keep hitting my mic here. So Rumble, Odyssey, and Getter, and you can give a small monetary donation. Helps fund our work and keep the lights on and our equipment and all of our traveling expenses. Every little bit really counts and really helps. Yeah. And then we will read your comment on screen. And if we have something to reply back or a comment to make in return, then we'll do that. So Trini Canadian gives us $1. If it is a bad thing to stand up for truth, morality, God, and what is right, then by golly, call me far right. I will wear it like a badge of honor. The thing is that I feel like I think that we don't have to put people into these boxes all the time, right? Like, why are we so quick to put people in these titles and these things? And it's just gaslighting people to disregard the merit of what they're saying. And it's wrong.
We get put into these boxes so that we can be divided from each other. They put you on your team and your thing. And even if you identify with that or not, it could be based on your looks. It could be based on anything like that. And then you get put this, and then they pit. That way they can easily pit everybody against each other. So, I mean, that's what I think is happening. But you're right. All of these, identity politics, it's just enough. And the whole far right thing, I mean, I get what you're saying. At this point, the definition of what far right isn't even what it used to be. So,
right.
So, yeah.
Adam from Ottawa gives us $1. Why is it that a reporter from CBC defined what misinformation is? Why can't so-called reporter Jonathan at least even try to debunk so-called misinformation? Why do we take him at his word? Yeah, well, I think more and more Canadians just aren't anymore. And they're starting to wake up and see that what the mainstream media says isn't always accurate. And I think that's great. I think that we should always question everything, even what I say, what anyone says. I think we should question it always. Yeah. And as more people begin to actually use their brains, right? Like turn on those gears, get them moving and get them exercised, because more than ever before, we need that to be happening on a grassroots ground level.
Well, and Adam's got a really good point. I mean, if I'm going to say something is wrong, you have to prove it. Like the next sentence should be, and this is why it's wrong. Here's the proof of it. But that's not what's happening in this article. So, yeah.
Right. All right. We're going to do a quick ad break, and then we'll come back for more goodness with Drea and I. Speaking of Rebel News Store, I have one, and mainstream media, right? It says "sell the lies." I don't know if you can see.
No, I don't have that one. That's
there's
a cool
your TV
one, though.
in
The
a
TV and the
trash
garbage.
basket. Yeah.
What would life be like? What would life be like? Woo! If there was no screens telling us what to think. But a lot of cool stuff in the store. And every time I go in, there's something new. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need that. So, and I like that we have like the light gray now and some of the ladies stuff. I'm really, really digging that stuff too. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I think our code for now, summer 25, you can buy 2 unisex tees and get a third one free, and always free global shipping. So you can use code SUMMER to utilize that, because there are so many great new designs, and what better way to virtue signal your freedom lovingness than to wear a rebel tee and be spotted in the wild. I always am interested, like when I wear my tees out, you know, who will be like, hey, that's a rebel tee. If, you know, if they don't recognize me, which I prefer when they don't, to be honest. I don't like that getting recognized out in public. Sometimes I'm in a rush or I have my kids.
It's a weird thing, isn't it? It's just, sometimes I'll see people look at me like with this look, like they know me. And then I'm like, oh shoot, like, did I go to high school with them? Like I'm still not expecting people to recognize me. And so when it happens, I'm like, oh yeah, right. You know, my face is online, isn't it? Like, you know,
I'm like, I think I just have a familiar face. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, but the flack we receive in our reports, you talked about that a little bit and things like that. I do want to say it's love out in person. Like we might get attacked online and while we're reporting, but I just find like that's never happening. It's never happened where I'm walking down the street and someone actually says something mean to me. You know what I mean? They just, unless I'm working, but it's just love. It's just love. And when you see somebody else wearing the rebel gear, it's kind of like the same thing. If you have a flag on your car, comment and let us know if you guys have a Canadian flag on their car. And then you get the honk honks from someone else and you're like, sometimes they don't have the flag and you're like, what did I do? And you look and they're like, and you're like, oh yeah, the flag. So it's kind of like wear it. It's an easy way to be patriotic. That's what I think that the rebel gear is at, rebelnewsstore.com. Okay. Next on the crazy, like scientists find a way to recycle wind turbine blades into, get this, gummy bear.
Yummy gummy bears.
Why is this happening?
So apparently they're utilizing this filtration process. So the composition of these turbines, you know, within it is like a glass fiber composition, and they can filter the glass fibers out. Hooray, because you probably don't want to ingest them. And they can extract some sort of resin from this filtration process. And then the resin is something that can be manufactured into a gummy bear. So we don't need to actually recycle these wind turbines. Our bodies can just be the recycling plants now. We can have some resin going through there. I think they would probably like switch out the, what's it called? I can't think of the word that they use to make the gummy bears. Vegetarians don't eat it.
Gelatin?
What is it called? Yes, gelatin? The gelatin. Yeah. So maybe they'll be vegan gummy bears.
So you're saying they're going to remove that and replace it with this new resin? Is that what?
This is my assumption, that the resin would be in place of like a gelatin, so that the vegans and the vegetarians could, you know, indulge in some former wind turbine gummy bears. I mean, how better to be green and recycle than to use your own body mechanisms?
And it says sports drinks too. So, I mean, the other alternatives, I saw that they said you can make other things like tabletops. Okay, that sounds cool. Like, why did we go to food? Why did we go to gummy bears and sports drinks? And I question... it seems awfully experimental too. Like they say they can get the glass fiber out. Is that like 100% true? Could something go wrong at some point and then you're actually just drinking glass fiber? Like it seems awfully experimental. So I'm not doing it. It's like,
apparently we're all about the experiments these days. Let's just put it into the body and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I was just saying to my little kid, like, here, come have your little glass fiber snacks. It's so bizarre. I just don't know why. If you can make tabletops and there was other things like that, why go to gummy bears? Like, just why? I don't get it.
And why do we need wind turbines anyway? I mean, this is more just, why are we using these things and trying to then institute it into some like consumable, recycled thing that, you know, safety. I question the safety of something like that. Let's just do away with the wind turbines. And
they're massive, aren't they? They're massive. But what is, I'm asking you because you probably know the answer. What are we using them for exactly? Like, why are we still hanging on to that? Do you know? Like, what is the reasoning?
For wind turbines or?
Yeah. Like,
well,
why
it's a
are they
virtue
still
signal. We want to be net zero, right?
Yeah. I just don't know what they're saying the benefit of still using them is if we have to go through all this trouble. But yeah, it says that we're doing an ad break, but I think we're not, right? Because I think we just...
Well, we skipped a topic by mistake, which was the mass graves report by Adam Soos, so our colleague in Alberta. And you've covered some of this stuff pretty extensively too, Drea, from what I gather. But he consulted with an expert who basically said here in this report that you couldn't discern that there may be a septic field with trenches in this exact location that was discovered through this ground penetrating radar, which is, very ambiguous and non-specific. So there could actually be, this could all be a result of a septic bed with trenches that are indiscernible from graves. Yes. This is a very interesting development and something, again, that we won't hear from the mainstream media. No. So can you give us a little bit of your reporting, summary of what you've been discovering there too, Drea, because you've been on the ground in Kamloops.
Well, first of all, thank you to the researcher and Adam for doing that report. I highly recommend you guys watch it after this live stream and check it out because it is quite remarkable. The like you said, the theory that it is sort of septic pots underneath and the evidence to support that. So make sure you guys check that out. But if you guys don't know, myself and Matt Brevner, the BC producer, we actually went around the time of the 1-year anniversary of this to try and get some answers. We went to the school and we ended up doing a documentary that's going to be screening in the fall. So seeing Adam's report, this is a very difficult, I think that these reports around Kamloops Indian Residential School, the mass graves or mass grave discovery, that has been the most difficult report for me to do. Yeah. Because the very first report I did, I think it took me 3 weeks because, I'm Black and Indigenous. I have family members back east or had family members back east that went to day residential schools. And it's like, I'm like, ooh, there's a lot of things that are not adding up here. Mm-hmm. How do you report on that without looking like a psychopath? I have to worry about my own family being pissed off at me and then God knows who else. But there were just simple things that weren't being answered right from the get-go in that first report, which was how on earth did you determine 215 children were underground using ground penetrating radar? It's just not possible. So, you have people understandably grieving, and you're getting that story across, but you're also having to juggle with the public like, hey, something's not adding up here. So flash forward a year later, we go down there and we actually get some answers, surprisingly, in a different way, because I've been reaching out for a year to the people who have the answers, the BC coroners, or should have the answers, the BC coroners, the RCMP. I mean, this should be treated like a crime, and of course the band itself, and I wasn't getting answers. So we used some more sort of investigative ways to get the answer. So make sure you've given us your email. I think if you go to kamloopsdocumentary.com, you can see the trailer there. And again, just give us your email so we know you're interested in that. But that's going to come out in the fall, and you're going to see there that there's something very strange going on here. Everything that the majority of people think has been discovered there, that the legacy media ran off like a mass grave of children underneath there. None of that, absolutely none of that is supported by any facts. And one thing that I touch on in the documentary is the material evidence, the only material evidence is this supposed juvenile rib bone that was discovered surface, according to the specialists involved, Sarah Bullier. That one and a tooth. And so Adam talks about that in this report too. So flash forward again, this was back in June that Matt and I went out. So flash forward and we're getting more confirmation that what we found in that documentary is looking like what Adam is discussing in this report. So watch that, go down the rabbit hole, let us know what you think. It's such a sensitive thing. I was in Walmart, I saw a shirt, it had 215 on it. And I'm like, even the specialist has come out and said, you know what, it's not 215 anymore. She's come out and said it's 200 probable targets of interest under the ground. Okay, so we're still saying 215. And sorry, if you want to talk about misinformation, why isn't the legacy media talking about the misinformation there, which followed or preceded, I think, 67 churches being burnt and vandalized across the country in 2.5 months. Okay, wow. So these are big stories that are not getting the attention they deserve, and it's hard because a lot of people grieved, understandably, with what happened. So, and it's not to dismiss some of the horrible things that happen at residential schools. We have to stand in the truth, and like Adam Sos points out so much, if you want truth and reconciliation, the first part is truth. So yeah, check out that report and stay tuned for the documentary. And, just share it with people, both of those things, so people are more aware.
Yeah, people becoming informed is the most important thing, in my opinion. And of course, not to be insensitive to the subject. Anytime there is this sort of injustice, especially when it involves children, that just pulls at the heartstrings of everyone. And I think that the mainstream media is capitalizing on that emotion-driven reporting to espouse this narrative that has shown now to not be factual. And I don't know about you, Drea, but I haven't seen any corrections being made by anyone who pushed that narrative so heavily last year.
Well, I think the National Post has they did a big release actually and said, something's not right here. And the New York Post, both the National Post, correct me if I'm wrong, the National Post and the New York Post originally said that a mass grave had been discovered. That is something Rebel News never said. In fact, we said it's not a mass grave. And that was one of the reasons the report took so long. Because if you read what came out and then you looked at the facts, it didn't make sense to report that it was a mass grave. And so we kind of waited a little bit to get it as right as possible for you guys, instead of trying to be first. I mean, that's a thing in journalism. It tends to be that the faster the report comes out, the more inaccurate it could be. And that's just because you don't have all the facts. But this was such an important topic that it wasn't about rushing it out. It was about really understanding what happened to the children that at the time I went down, I thought were buried there. And then it was like, why are things not adding up? Maybe there isn't children buried there, or maybe there's more, maybe there's less, but the facts are not aligning. So I don't know why that's happening. I'm not going to theorize. I have my ideas, but let's just get the truth out. That's what matters
exactly.
the most. Yeah. I don't know. Are we going to show a clip of Adam's report, or we're not? So.
No, I don't. I think we're running a bit low on time. So we're going to go to a quick ad break. We have a few more super chats, and then we're going to talk about some COVID stuff. So I think actually we'll show the ad. We'll get off of YouTube. So if you're not already joining us on an alternative platform, head over to Rumble, Odyssey, or Getter and join us there for the last 10 minutes or so of the live stream. Because we're going to talk about some COVID spicy stuff that goes against YouTube's community standards. So we'll just err on the side of caution, get off YouTube completely for the last 10 minutes. And after the ad break, you'll have to meet us over there.
The remains of 215 children have been found in a mass grave in Canada.
Many of you know that just over a year ago, the discovery of the remains of 215 children was found at the Kamloops Indian Residential School at the Kamloops First Nation. But what if I were to show you that what I just said wasn't true, and that in fact, a year later, not a single body has been found?
This mass grave is a painful reminder of the genocide.
Canada's leaders aren't condemning the burning of churches. No, they're endorsing the burning of churches.
A juvenile rib bone that surfaced in the same area.
You'd be surprised the number of people who say, I'm a doctor, I'm a paramedic, and this is definitely a human bone, and it's definitely not.
Is it the chief?
Yes.
Oh, that seems so powerful. So we have a few super chats to get through before we chat about some COVID spicy things. Trini Canadian again gives $1. Vancouver should stop complaining about rewriting history. They should spend more time cleaning up the downtown east side. It is a shame that the city is falling apart. It is an embarrassment. Yeah, really sad.
Well, that's been an ongoing trouble, and you're absolutely right with that.
G Melinda G60 gives $2. Go ladies. Drea is one of my faves. There are so many.
Thank you, guys. Bless
Canadian Mom 1997 gives $1. What do you think of Jean Charest lying about his involvement in the World Economic Forum? He's a member since 1994. I don't think much of Jean Charest, to be honest.
That's funny.
Not even really on my radar. Yeah, some of his comments and responses to Alexa Lavoie back in, oh gosh, when was that? I think in May we covered one of the first leadership debates in Ottawa, and right then and there I knew that he was someone that probably didn't deserve my attention, or arguably anyone's attention. So I don't give him much thought, to be honest.
You mean it wasn't the Beetlejuice appearance that did that for you? Oh, I'm so mean. That was mean. just forget. Can we edit that out of the live stream, please? Okay.
Trini Canadian gives another $1. Thank you. Drea, love you to pieces. Tamara, you are one of the true investigative reporters. Thank you very much. Absolutely. I also really like Drea. So we're going to go to this
investigative queen.
We're going to go to the backlash that Western University is facing. So for anyone who's not aware, Western University in London, Ontario has mandated boosters, so the third dose of the novel COVID biologic injections, for anyone coming onto campus for in-person learning. So this was after the University of Toronto, obviously in Toronto, Ontario, instituted a third dose mandate for anyone living in campus or in residence, sorry. Now Western has kind of gone above and beyond what U of T did, which was already egregious enough. And they are instituting boosters and mandatory masking for everyone to return to in-person learning classes in the fall. But the students have had enough have had enough. And so they've literally called themselves Enough is Enough Western. Their Twitter handle is @StudentsForAgency. And they're mobilizing within the last, I don't know, I guess it's been 3 or 4 days. So Western first announced this on the 22nd of August. We're now the 25th. And in that time, they have garnered over 5,000 followers on Twitter. I don't know how many offhand on Instagram, but they're on both platforms. And they have been calling for essentially a storming of the phone lines, emails, and now they're mobilizing to partake in or to organize a protest happening near campus on Saturday. So again, that's in London, Ontario, and you can find them on social media. Enough is Enough Western, or Students for Agency is their Twitter handle. And I think this is beautiful to see. So what Western did is they made sure that they made this announcement. Yeah, there's one of their, I think, is that the protest? Yes, that's their protest poster.
Do you know is someone getting out there to cover this?
I believe we have 2 reporters, or a reporter and a videographer, who will be heading to London to cover this protest. I think they're receiving a lot of publicity already. Because this is being done, not in alignment with any sort of provincial recommendation, chief medical officers of health, any medical officers of health. In Ontario, our own chief medical officer of health, Kieran Moore, recently in a press announcement said himself that young, healthy individuals should weigh their own personal risk versus benefit of balancing, the risk of a COVID infection with the potential myocarditis risk, very real, and compounding risk of myocarditis in especially young, healthy males. So the fact that Western's done this.
Sorry, I think I have a delay, so I keep interrupting you because I think you're done, but then you're not. Go ahead. But yeah.
Well, and Western did this, Drea, 1 week after the first installment of tuition was due. So they've kind of left this gray area for students and their families who are now, obviously would like to seek reimbursement of the paid fees for tuition, because I understand that a lot of them are not going to comply. There's a lot of non-compliance that's going to happen with this particular mandate. I mean, finally, right? The fact that they got away with the first 2 doses is just insane. But So it's kind of like an unheard of thing that the administrators will be offering reimbursements until I think September the 1st. So you have until September 1st to decide whether or not you're returning or deferring or what your plan is as a student. But I mean, these poor students, like the last time that some of these kids had a normal school experience, they were 15. Like they would have been in grade 10. Mm-hmm. So they've gone through the last 2 years of high school, graduations, their first year of university, maybe even their second year. Some of them, depending on where they're at in this process, like, let these poor young adults and these young adolescents get back to normal. This is just the fact that we're here after 2.5 years with all the things that were supposed to prevent this from happening, reinstituting them again, speaks to the fact that none of this has worked.
There's so many layers of wickedness here. Like, I'm so proud of these students for standing up for themselves in this way. It will never end if you allow a school to push you in this way. They're essentially saying you're the demographic that's more at risk from having an adverse reaction to this, but you have to do it to school, even though that you're in the demographic that isn't at risk. If you're healthy with COVID, it's so evil and so wicked. So again, I'm so happy that they're standing up here out here in BC. Chief Medical Health Officer Patty Daly, she actually wrote a letter months ago to the University of UBC out here to say, stop discriminating against the unvaccinated and vaccinated students. There's no scientific reason for doing so. Yet the article I read about this, these students saying enough is enough, was saying, well, they're just following the science. What science are you following? Like the science of being afraid or something? Like, is this just a cabal that's so terrified of COVID still that they're just going to impose this on all of these young, healthy people? And I'm so happy. I hope that students are coming together, vaccinated or not, and standing with each other and saying enough is enough. They deserve an education just like us. And we can't allow this to be normalized anymore. Like our youngest, our brightest, the future, being told, inject this into your body, whether you have reservations about it or not, or else you're done. You're done. You won't even have a career. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I agree. And we are just 1 minute over now. So I know there's a couple other subjects that we were hoping to touch on, but I think we can probably get to maybe a full report on some of them, because I think some of them do deserve a full report or at least a write-up. But we have one super chat from Lemon B who gives $1. And she says, how do you lovely ladies manage homeschooling with your careers at Rebel, a fellow aspiring Rebel at home with her special needs kids? Oh, that's so nice. Well, currently I'm not, to be honest. I have always homeschooled my children. And now that I work full time and I absolutely love my job, we're going through a transitionary period. So I'm not sure what September is going to look like at this point. Trying to firm up a few things in that regard. But currently it's just like a free for all, trying to manage it all. So I don't even know if I would call it management at this point. It's literally just fly by the seat of our pants. So what about you, Drea?
Yeah. So, like it's hard. I think I've kind of lucked out. I have a teen, so she's still in the public school system. She was like, I'm like, you're going to homeschool. She was like, yeah, that's not happening. So I was like, okay, fine. But she's got a good head on her shoulder. I was worried about the little guy sort of being indoctrinated. He's too young to know any better. And that's why I was like, it's very important for me, even though I work this more than full-time hour job, I'll be so stressed out about my little one being in school. So I thought, I'm going to give it a try. And I think God blessed me with a child that just naturally learns. So he loves learning. He's a bit advanced. He skipped a year. So it just works out that he's so quick. Like he's already ahead of me in math, I'll be honest. So it works out that he just loves learning. The one thing is I can't do the schedule. Like I can't necessarily do the same time every day. It happens, but it doesn't necessarily happen at the same time. That's the only thing that I feel is different. But he's happy to just sit here and learn and go ahead with what's happening while I'm working on my laptop or things like that. Dad helps out too. And then we also are attached with homeschool groups. So there's some things where they can go to together and learn for a day, like Thursdays we do that. We didn't even stop that through the summer. So it kind of takes a village. I think that's the answer.
Yes. Yeah, it certainly does. And some creative thinking, right? You have to think outside the box. This isn't necessarily how school has to look or go. And be gentle with yourself on days that it's hard and you don't get to the thing that you wanted to get to. And I think too, it's really dependent on the child. So like we have a dynamic, right, where we have various ages and various children who have different personalities. And some children may thrive in a more public school system as long as you can give them that good, solid sounding board at home. Some children, their homeschooling is not for everyone. It's not for every child and it's not for every family. So I think having an open mind with that and recognizing it is an important part as well.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we did it. We didn't talk that much about COVID, which is awfully strange for Tamara and I, but
well, there was a couple things that we didn't quite get to. So like I said, I think they deserve their own reports. And one of them I've kind of had in the works in my mind anyway. So stay tuned. Follow us, rebelnews.com always. Thank you for joining us and for being here today. I am really dwindling now, so I'm glad that we're going to get off the live.
All right. Thank you guys for being there and feel better soon, Tamara. Bye. Till next week.
All right.
And the International Vanity Project of a scandal-plagued member of Justin Trudeau's inner circle. Yes, I'm talking about former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. And the bill for his ego trip, way more than previously reported. Worse still, Morneau is from one of Canada's richest families. I've got a plan to